Okay, this is College Algebra Dual Credit Course, Unit 1, Notes 1, Adding and Subtracting Fractions. So first we started off with our vocabulary. So a fraction is a part of a whole. So I told everyone, think of when you buy a pizza. When you buy a box of pizza, that entire box is the whole. As you are eating slices of that pizza, those slices would be considered a fraction of the whole. The numerator is the number on the top. So in my example of 1/2, the numerator is 1. The denominator is the number on the bottom. So in my example of 1/2, that's a 2. Like denominator means it has the same bottom numbers. Unlike denominator means we have different bottom numbers. And a common denominator is when we find a multiple of all bottom numbers. So let's say we have 2 or 3 fractions. We'd have to find the common denominator between all 2 or 3 of those fractions. So looking at rule number 1, so let's say we had the same denominator. So if you look at number 1, we have 2/7 plus 3/7. So since they both have a denominator of 7, all we need to do is add the numerators. So 2 plus 3 is 5, which means our answer is 5/7. The denominator stays the same. Okay, number 2, we have 6/9 minus 2/9. They are both the same denominator, so I'm now just going to subtract the numerators. 6 minus 2 is 4, and then I write the whole thing over 9. Example 3, I have 3/8 plus 2/8. So again, the denominators are the same. They're both 8, so I just add the numerators. So 3 plus 2 is 5, so I have my answer of 5/8. And then number 4, I have 3/5 plus 1/5. Again, we already have the same denominator of 5. So 3 plus 1 in the numerators is 4. So my answer is 4/5. Okay, rule number 2, different denominators. So anytime we have different denominators, like on our example for number 5, we have 1/2 plus 1/4. Notice how the 2 and the 4 are different numbers. We need to now find a common denominator. So in order to do that, it's always going to be out of those two denominators, either the larger one, so in our case 4, or if it's neither of them, we would just multiply them together. So for this one, our common denominator is going to be 4. Well, why? Because 2 times 2 is 4. And 4 times 1 is 4. We can multiply each of these fractions by something in order to get that same common denominator. So on 1/2, I'm going to have to multiply that one by 2/2. So I'll bring down that 1/2. And then the 1/4, I don't need to change it at all because it already has a 4 in the denominator. So when I simplify this, I get 2 times 1, which is 2, over 2 times 2, which is 4, so 2/4, plus 1/4. Now I have the same number on the denominator, so I add the numerators, and I get my answer is 3/4. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing for the next one. For number 6, I have a denominator of 6 and 3. The common denominator is going to be 6. So I have 5/6 minus, and in order to get that 3 to turn into a 6, I'm going to multiply that fraction by 2/2. So bring down the 1/3, and now I have 5/6 minus 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 3 is 6. So 5/6 minus 2/6, which is 3/6. And notice how this 3/6 can reduce because I can actually divide each the top and the bottom number by the same thing to make it even smaller. So I could divide both by 3 and I get 1/2. So 1/2 is actually my answer. Let's look at number 7. So again, I have 5/6 plus 1/2. They're both two different numbers, so my common denominator here is going to be 6. So 5/6 plus, and then what do I need to multiply by that 2 in order to make it 6? And that would be 3. So 3/3. Bring down the 1/2, and then I continue solving. So 5/6 plus 3/6, okay, multiplying that 3 by the 1/2, and I get 8 over 6. Well, 8 over 6 can simplify by dividing both by 2, and I get 4 over 3 as my answer. Okay, number 8. So this is where it gets a little tricky because notice we have a 7 and we have a 3. There's nothing I can multiply 3 by to give me 7. So this is an instance where the common denominator here is going to come about by multiplying those two numbers together. So 7 times 3 is 21. So 21 is going to be my common denominator. So in order to do that, I'm going to multiply the 4 over 7 by 3 over 3. And then I'm going to multiply the 2/3 by 7 over 7. And again, my goal is to get a common denominator of 21. So when I do this, I have 12 over 21 plus 14 over 21, which gives me 26 over 21. And that is my answer. Okay. Rule number 3. So what happens if we now have a whole number that is being added or subtracted by a fraction? Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to turn that whole number into a fraction, and we do that by writing it over 1. Okay, so now we have two fractions, one with the denominator 1 and one with the denominator 3. So the common denominator here would be 3. So I would take 4 over 1 and multiply it by 3 over 3 because I want that common denominator. Bring the 2 over 3 down, and then I get 12 over 3 minus 2 over 3, which gives me 10 over 3. Okay, number 10. Same thing. I need to turn this into a fraction by writing it over 1, and then I need to get a common denominator of 5. So I have 5 over 5 times 2 over 1 plus 3 over 5. So this is 10 over 5 plus 3 over 5, which is 13 over 5. Okay, rule number 4. So improper fractions. So what I highlighted in blue is an improper fraction. That's where we have a mixed number next to a fraction. So in order to add or subtract a fraction to that, we have to turn that improper fraction into, that proper fraction into an improper fraction. And we do that by following this arrow. So for example, we would multiply these two numbers together. So 3 times 4 is 12. And then we would add the numerator, so 13. So I would multiply and then add. So this becomes 13 over 4 instead of 3 1/4. Now I just add 2/3 to it, and then I continue my process by looking and trying to get a common denominator. So here I'd have to multiply those two numbers together, and then I get 12. And so my common denominator, I have to multiply this first one by 3, and the second one by 4. And so I get 39 over 12 plus 8 over 12, which gives me 47 over 12. Okay. Now let's look at some applications. So I have a baker uses 3/4 cup of sugar and 1/2 cup of brown sugar. How much sugar is used in total? So I have 3/4 plus 1/2. Well, I have to get a common denominator. So that common denominator would be 4. So I have 3 over 4 plus 2 times 2 times 1/2. And again, that is to change that second fraction to have a denominator of 4. This gives me 3/4 plus 2/4, which is 5/4. And since this is an application problem, I need to write this in a sentence. So in total, 5/4 cup of sugar was used. And again, that is my answer, is the sentence itself. And then lastly, I have the problem that states a ribbon is 7/10 meters long. You cut off 3/10 of a meter. How much is left? So I have 7/10. Cut off means I subtract 3/10. So notice how they both have a common denominator of 10. So I just need to subtract the numerators. 7 minus 3 is 4 over 10, which I can reduce by dividing both by 2, and I get 2 over 5. And then I just write my sentence. There is 2/5 meters of ribbon left. And that is my answer.